He pulled out all the stops here. I'm told that right now he is huddled in the back of the chamber with staff watching the vote count on a computer. That he was all day today pulling out the stops. He got Mitch McConnell to come out and make a statement. And 35 people broke with him, including, I'm told, two surprises, Rodney Davis of Illinois and French Hill of Arkansas. Neither one of those gentlemen are members of the impeachment 10. Neither one of them, I believe, are part of the Problem Solvers Caucus. At best, I heard yesterday 38. Getting to 35 after all that pressure is a real problem for Kevin McCarthy. It is a solid break with a large group of his members.
Yeah, all the Democrats have voted in favor. 35 Republicans have voted in favor. Right now, the vote, they still haven't gavelled, so it's not yet official. 251 in favor, 175 opposed. Governor Kasich, it's obviously going to pass in the House of Representatives, but then it goes to the Senate where they need 60 votes. The 50-50 split in the Senate, they need 60 votes. Do you think there will be 10 Republicans in the Senate who will vote in favor of this resolution to create this new commission?
Well, I don't have the answer for that right now, Wolf, but there's going to put a lot of heat on them over there. But let me, having been in the House and having been through so many battles over there, I listened to both Jamie and David, agree with them, and Adam. This is a huge deal. You have to understand the pressure that was put on these members to just fall in line. Now, when they kicked Liz Cheney out, which I think was a very stupid thing to do, I started to say that they're going to create opposition inside of the party itself. And then it was interesting today is you have the Senate beginning to weigh in. Mitch McConnell saying that he wasn't for this, and yet 35 Republicans walked against the leader. And I can tell you what they were doing. They sat in their office, they talked to their staff, and said, "Darn it, this needs to be investigated. This has to happen." And when anybody in the staff would say, "Well, what about the politics?" I think these 35 members said, "Forget it. Who cares? I'm here to do a job. We need to get to the bottom of this." 35 doesn't sound like a lot when you have so many voting the other way, but I got to tell you, it's a big darn deal. And if I were the leaders, I'd be very concerned. And this may be the beginning of the breaking of the dam. I'm not prepared to say that yet, but there's cracks forming. And it is a big blow to the leadership that they lost these people. And that's going to give momentum over into the Senate to see if they can find the 10 people to say they ought to get to the bottom of it. And I think you're going to get Murkowski. I think you're going to get Romney. You got a good chance to get to the 10. This ought to happen. But this gives me hope. Somebody that has stood against this nonsense for many years, it's his good news.
I think I see Nancy Pelosi there, the House Speaker. Let's listen in.
152. The nays are 175. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
All right, there you have it. It's official, and the Speaker, David, she specifically wanted to make that historic, important announcement. So let's talk where it goes from here. What's happening in the Senate? Because Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader in the Senate, he's opposed to this.
He is opposed to it. And a lot of his members have started coming out. Some of those that were more, I want to look at this, let's see. But now people like John Thune or Roy Blunt, they are not at all on board with this. So when you look at the math in the Senate, I think the first place you look, and this is what John Kasich was just saying, well, you look at those 7 who voted to convict in the impeachment trial. Okay, but guess what? Susan Collins is one of those 7. And Susan Collins said today she can't support this current version of the bill that passed. She would like to see some changes to the bill. So this is not a Senate Republican conference that is ready to show who the 10 are that would join with Democrats and that this is a fait accompli. This is going to be an uphill battle in the Senate.
This commission passed 252, Jamie, to 175, 252 in favor, 175 opposed. 35, that's the official number, 35 Republicans joined all the Democrats in voting to create this commission. What do you see happening in the Senate? Because in the coming days, they're going to have to vote. They need 60 votes to break a filibuster and see if it gets approved there.
I think the Senate is on life support because if someone like Susan Collins, who voted for impeachment, wants to make changes, well, maybe there are 10 people who could agree to changes. But what we heard today was that Mitch McConnell does not want this. And I'm not sure that he's going to change his mind. And we may be back to square one. Nancy Pelosi has floated the idea of a select committee, but right now I would not be optimistic in the Senate with what Mitch McConnell has said.
Let's get Ryan Nobles, our congressional correspondent, into this conversation. Ryan, why would Mitch McConnell, who was very critical of the former president in the events leading up to January 6th and the insurrection, why wouldn't he want a commission to investigate, to learn the lessons, to try to make sure it never happens again?
The most simple answer to that question, Wolf, is that it makes his life much more difficult in order to win back the Senate majority. And that's not just me speculating. This is something that we know he has discussed with members inside of his conference. It's something that we know the House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy even talked about with members of the Senate earlier today. It just complicates life so much more for Senate Republicans and House Republicans, for that matter, if you have an elongated, very public showing of this investigation through an independent commission. And even furthermore, when you create a bipartisan independent commission, it makes it so much more difficult for these members that are going to go back to their districts and to their states to claim that the whole process is political. The whole purpose of it is that it's not political. It's going to be run by people that have nothing to do with the Congress, that are no longer elected leaders or never were elected leaders, and also don't owe anything to anyone. And that's the reason that they've been given these jobs. And so, you have to keep in mind what this would look like. Once the formation of the commission started, they would hold hearings, they'd have subpoena power, they would bring people in front of them, and it would be done in a very public fashion. You can bet, Wolf, that we would be running these hearings from stem to stern on television because they would be so interesting and because of their importance to the American people as this commission tries to get to the bottom of exactly what happened. Now, John Katko on the floor today pleaded with his Republican colleagues that the whole point of this commission was to take the politics out of the process. And that is why they put in provisions that they did to do exactly that. But you can't escape the political backdrop to all of this, Wolf, because of the players involved. Former President Trump would be involved. McCarthy would be involved because of his role on what happened on January 6th as well. And that just makes that process so much more difficult as you head into those 2022 midterms.
Do we know, Ryan, when the Senate will actually vote on this commission? And if there potentially are 10 Republicans, assuming all 50 Democrats vote in favor, are there 10 Republicans who will join them?
We do not have a timeline as to specifically when this bill will make it to the floor. The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer promised on numerous occasions this week that it would make it to the floor. I think the big question that we need to ask here over the next 24 to 48 hours is, will there be some sort of negotiation between Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats to fine-tune the bill to bring those 10 Republicans over the finish line? A number of these Republicans who are inclined to support this concept but said that they didn't necessarily like the bill, said they wanted to make some changes. Are Democrats willing to do that? That's the big question, and that will probably tell us whether or not those 10 Republicans will come and cross party lines to vote for this bill.
We'll see if that happens. Governor Kasich, were you surprised that 35 Republicans in the House joined all the Democrats in voting in favor of this new commission?
I was very pleased, Wolf. And let me also say, look, the heat's going to be turned up in the Senate, and this is not a complicated question. The question is real simple. Should we have a bipartisan commission to investigate what happened on January 6th? It's very difficult for somebody to run the other way. I'm not telling you that McConnell can't win this thing, but let's not be presuming that there's not going to be a lot of work behind the scenes and that some of those senators, because remember, when senators go home, they're not answering to Mitch McConnell. When they go home, they got to answer to their constituents. It's pretty simple. The heat's going to be turned up. The media is going to turn the heat up. And it's going to be very interesting to see where this goes. But the good news is, with 35 Republicans, it absolutely puts more heat on the United States Senate, the Republicans there to do something.
And it's interesting, David, those 35 Republicans not only went against McCarthy, but they went against Trump as well, who strongly demanded no commission.
And this is the largest rebuke of Trump that we've seen from elected officials in his own party. I can't remember a time that we saw it like this. So that is a significant deal. And I agree with what Congressman Kasich is saying there, Governor Kasich is saying there, which is that I do think this 35 number, it is a dynamic thing now as it moves over to the Senate. And there will be calculations there. But Mitch McConnell was getting out ahead of it to say, okay, folks, when it comes here, you know my position. I don't want this bill.
Once again, 252 votes in favor of creating this commission, 175 opposed. 35 Republicans joined all the Democrats in voting in favor of this commission. It now goes to the Senate. We'll see what happens there. To our viewers, thanks very much for watching. I'm Wolf Blitzer in the Situation Room. Aaron Burnett continues our breaking coverage right now.
Good evening, I'm Aaron Burnett. Out front tonight, we have breaking news. The House passing a bill to create a bipartisan independent commission to investigate the January 6th insurrection at the U.S. Capitol. 35 Republicans breaking from their party, despite heavy personal lobbying by House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy himself, who we have just learned called anyone that he heard was going to vote for the commission to try to get them to vote no. A source telling CNN, quote, Kevin is pulling out all the stops. And a majority of the 175 Republicans went ahead, caved, carried out Trump's orders, McCarthy's orders, and voted against the bipartisan commission. The former president calling the investigation a, quote, Democrat trap, adding that he hopes Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy are listening. Well, they sure were, and they took action. McCarthy obviously was one of the 175 Republicans to vote no, even though Democrats gave the minority leader what he wanted. So back in February, Kevin McCarthy started getting upset about this. He sent the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi a letter, and she released the letter. So it had McCarthy's specific asks for this commission. He wanted an even split of Republicans and Democrats, equal subpoena power, and no predetermined findings or conclusions. Pelosi made all those changes, so McCarthy got every single thing that he specifically asked for, but it did not matter. McCarthy voted no because, obviously, this is not about uncovering why that awful day happened. It is now just as simple as this. It's a loyalty test for Republicans to Trump, and most are falling in line. Just listen to Senator Mitch McConnell.
I've made the decision to oppose the House Democrats' slanted and unbalanced proposal for another commission to study the events of January the 6th.
Well, again, just to repeat, the people on the commission, half Democrat, half Republican, equal subpoena power, yeah, all that. Oh, and by the way, as McConnell knows, the commission was negotiated by a Republican. And by the way, McConnell wasn't always against studying the events of January the 6th, as he puts it, because the day after the insurrection, he released a statement, and it reads in part, yesterday represented a massive failure of institutions, protocols, and planning that are supposed to protect the first branch of our federal government. A painstaking investigation and thorough review must now take place. Painstaking investigation. We go from that to none at all. This is quite incredible. And what happened to the man who was so incensed by what happened on the Capitol on January 6th that he gave the most impassioned speech of his political career after Trump was acquitted in the Senate in his second impeachment trial?
Former President Trump's actions preceded the riot for a disgraceful dereliction of duty. There's no question, none, that President Trump is practically and morally responsible for provoking the events of the day. No question about it.
Well, in his opposition now to an investigation from both McConnell and McCarthy, it comes as more and more Republicans are questioning the very facts, the very existence of January 6th. Republicans like Congressman Andrew Clyde.
If you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January the 6th, you would actually think it was a normal tourist visit.
A normal tourist visit. Okay, so let's just pause here. Clyde said that. So let's show you Clyde. This is an image of Clyde on the day of the insurrection, helping to block the door to the chamber from what he now calls tourists. And as the mob grew more aggressive, Here's Clyde on the far left, pressed up against the wall, appearing to be screaming as security guards pull their guns on what he now claims were people that could be confused with tourists. I mean, this is incredible. Did he not think anyone was going to see this video? Even today, the FBI is releasing what you see on your screen now, new video from January 6th. You can see Trump supporters attacking police officers, throwing a crutch at them, screaming expletives. And tonight, about 40 to 50 members of the Capitol Police releasing a statement that reads in part, "We members of the United States Capitol Police write this letter to express our profound disappointment with the recent comments from both chambers' minority leaders expressing no need for a January 6th commission," adding, "It is inconceivable that some of the members we protect would downplay the events of January 6th. These officers calling out those 175 Republicans, including McCarthy and soon to be McConnell in the Senate, two men who, by the way, we have this new video, right? Police being attacked by these Trump supporters. Well, McConnell and McCarthy, I don't know, what do they not care? I mean, at least publicly they have expressed their support for the police."
It's been a rough couple of years for men and women in blue. The Republican conference wanted to not only say thank you, we wanted to be a part of it and be with you.
The past year has seen the difficult job of law enforcement become even harder. They've battled the challenges of a historic pandemic. In many places, they've grappled with increased violent crime rates and unrest.
Well, in one case of grappling with unrest, McConnell and McCarthy voting to not ever find out what really happened, turning their backs on some of the officers who were victims of that unrest that was incited by Trump. And you know, just take it from the family of an officer, how we leave him good. He died by suicide after responding to the riot. They say, quote, "We believe a thorough, nonpartisan investigation into the root causes of and the response to the January 6th riot is essential for our nation to move forward." Manu Raju is out front live on Capitol Hill tonight. So, Manu, we've seen how this went in the House. The Senate will need 10 Republican votes to pass this. What are the chances right now of that happening?
At the moment, it appears pretty slim, and that's because the Senate Republican leaders have come out strongly against this. Mitch McConnell, as you mentioned, others raising concerns about the politics of a long investigation, something that could come out as the party is trying to fight to battle back and win control of the Senate majority and the House majority as well. The concern expressed by Republicans like Senator John Thune of South Dakota is that this could be used as a political weapon of sorts against their party when they want to focus on the economy instead. One Republican, John Cornyn, a member of the Republican leadership, told me that he is concerned that Democrats' goal, in his view, is to keep this investigation going on and on, which is one reason why you're seeing the opposition being overwhelming on the Republican side. Now, just what happened in the House here, 35 Republicans did break ranks in that vote. That the bill was approved by a 252 to 175 vote. Of those 35 Republicans, 10 of those actually were the ones who voted to impeach Donald Trump for inciting that January 6th insurrection. Others are part of the bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. Some moderate Republicans, including ones in difficult races like Mariette Miller Meeks of Iowa, another Republican, Rodney Davis, he's a top Republican in the House Administration Committee, voted for this as well. But that's still a fraction of the House Republican Conference. Of course, 210 members represent that conference. So overwhelmingly, you're seeing an effort here to try to scuttle this, and they could potentially win and defeat this bill where it moves on to the Senate next in this 50-50 chamber with 10 Republicans who needed to break ranks. High hurdle right now.
It certainly is. All right. Thank you very much, Manu. And I want to go out front now to Republican Congressman Carlos Jimenez. He voted in favor of forming the January 6th Commission. So, Congressman, obviously you were in the vast minority of your own party, one of 35 Republicans who voted against what your leadership wanted, against what Donald Trump wanted. Why did you vote in favor of the commission anyway, Congressman?
Well, I got to set the record straight. Our leader, McCarthy, never called me, never tried to change my vote. That's one of the great things about our leader. He allows us to vote our conscience. And so the reason that I voted for it is because when I saw the events of January 6th, being the former mayor of Miami-Dade County, former sheriff, I saw a breakdown in communications. I saw a breakdown in coordination, in anticipation, and I want to get to the bottom of how our security forces allowed a breach of the people's house, the Capitol.
And just to be clear here, the Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, obviously, we do know he made calls to several of your colleagues, but you're saying he did not actually call you and get you to try to change your vote.
That's correct.
So let me ask you, we understand that McCarthy was in the back of the chamber during the vote. He was watching very closely. Obviously, leadership was there. They want to know. They want to know who votes which way. We know Trump wants to know who votes which way. He'll be happy to call each of you out individually when that moment comes. Are you at all afraid? Are you afraid of bucking former President Trump's view, your party's leadership view?
No, I mean, look, that's one of the great things about our party and the leader in particular. You know, I've been able to, you know, break ranks with my party on a number of issues, unlike the Democrats who don't break ranks at all. They are the most partisan group that I've seen or I've heard of in my generation. And so they've only had 2 Democrats actually break ranks in the 5 months that we've been here. And so apparently Nancy Pelosi doesn't like any of her Democrats to break ranks with her. My leader, on the other hand, allows us to have free, independent thought, and so I really admire him for that. Well, I guess you do, but I'm inside and you're not, and so I know what goes on inside my party. You don't.
No, I didn't say I did. I said Liz Cheney was kicked out of leadership for her points of view on calling out the election for being a lie. Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
No, she was not. She was actually called out because she kept talking about that. We need to talk about what's going on right now with the Biden administration, the inflation, the high gas prices.
But I thought you voted for this because you did want to talk about what happened on January 6th and get to the bottom of it.
I do. I absolutely. Well, I want the commission to find out what were the security breakdowns of what happened on January 6th, and it should never happen again. We should never have the security breakdown that we had on January 6th that caused the People's House to be breached. That's what I'm looking for, and I'm also very happy that our ranking member Katko was able to do a bipartisan and get some concessions from the Democrats. That's why I voted for this, because it is.
Are you disappointed in your leadership though for not wanting to get to the bottom of this like you do, for not wanting answers like you do?
Look, that's the great thing about our party. We have differences of opinion. My leader has his own opinion. He allows us to have ours, and so no, I'm not disappointed in him at all. I think he's a great leader. I think he's going to be a great Speaker of the House in about a year and a half.
So Trump, as you know, made January 6th, Congressman, all about overturning the election. And his lie, because that's what it is, his lie that Biden was not the legitimate winner. You just have to hear him from his very own mouth talk about that day, that vote, and what he thought that vote to certify the election clearly signified. Here he is.
All Vice President Pence has to do is send it back to the states to recertify, and we become president, and you are the happiest people.
So don't certify, he becomes the president. I know on that day, Congressman, you voted against certifying the results of the election in 2 states. Now, those two states would not have changed the ultimate outcome of the election. You have said Biden is the legitimate president of this country. Yes. But you know that 67% of people, according to the latest CBS poll of Republicans, do not believe Joe Biden is the legitimate winner of the 2020 election. Do you have any regrets about how your vote fed into what Trump was saying? He linked those things together, his lie, that could be contributing to Republicans refusing to accept a legitimate president.
Absolutely. I have no regrets of my votes on that day. I voted not to impeach the president because I didn't think he had cited the events that happened. I know for a fact that I saw people in my hotel room that were saying they were going to do something at 2 o'clock, and that happened at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I also know, and I still believe, that Arizona and Pennsylvania, the election laws were violated, and that the legislature, who is the rightful place where these laws are made, those laws were violated, and that's the reason why I voted not to certify Arizona and Pennsylvania, which would not have overturned the election. And so President Biden is the rightful president of the United States. It's not, but it's dissimilar to what happened in 2005, when a number of Democrats actually voted not to certify Ohio, which would have overturned the election results. And so, this is not something that hasn't happened in the past. And so I vote my conscience. I felt that there was it was unconstitutional, and that's why I voted the way I did. And I will not, and I do not have any regrets about the way that I voted.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure.
And now the co-sponsor of the bill to create the January 6th Commission, Homeland Security Committee Chairman, Democrat Benny Thompson. So, Congressman, I know there's a lot, obviously, of what Congressman Jimenez says that you would take great issue with, but he did vote for this commission. He was one of only 35 Republicans to do so. And in doing so, he's at risk. He's at risk. His political future is at risk by a vote like that. What do you say to those 35 Republicans who actually got on board and bucked their own leadership and bucked President Trump and voted for your bill?
Well, first of all, they took a principled vote. The people who voted on the Republican side, they were there. They saw what went on, and you can't, in reality, whitewash the events. It was an insurrection, it was a riot, whatever you want to call it, but it was not the orderly operation of the United States Capitol. And so, for those individuals who voted to get to the facts, we met Republicans at every point to try to make this situation bipartisan. As you already spoke to, Leader McCarthy, we, word for word, accepted what he wanted because we just want to get to the facts. The public deserves the fact, Congress deserves the fact, and again, we have to protect the United States Capitol, the citadel of democracy in this country, and to see the actions of January 6th, it's heartbreaking. And so we have to get to it. I thank my ranking member, John Katko, for being an honorable person in this process. He took a lot of heat, but he said, I support it because it's the right thing to do. I spent 20 years prosecuting criminals and said this act that occurred on January 6th need a full and thorough review.
And it does. And we all, and by the way, that's what originally Mitch McConnell said, right? He said, I quote him, a painstaking investigation and thorough review must now take place. And yet now he's made clear that he's going to vote against this in the Senate, obviously do everything possible to get his Republican caucus on board to do the same thing. Do you think there's any chance this bill passes the Senate, Chairman?
Well, I'm optimistic that it will pass. People said we wouldn't get more than 20 votes in the House from Republicans. We got 35. I'm optimistic on the Senate side. If senators are allowed and not arm twist to go the other way, we'll get it. But again, every time I see the pictures, every time I talk to groups, they ask me, how did this happen in the greatest country in the world, that people attacked our government? We're not a tin-horn dictatorship. We are a democracy. We set the gold standard for every other country in the world who would aspire to be what we are. And so it was tragic. I think Democrats and Republicans owe this country a debt to get to the facts, to make sure that whatever this commission comes up with, we agree to implement it. The Senate, I hope they see it. You know, this is not Democrat-Republican. It's just not. And for them to try to make it, that is absolutely wrong.
Well, I appreciate your time, Chairman. Thank you very much. And I know you and your ranking member, Katko, worked really hard on this. It can't be said enough that it was bipartisan. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Chairman Benny Thompson there, Homeland Security. And next breaking news, New York's Attorney General appears to be closing in on the CFO of the Trump Organization, now opening a criminal investigation into Allen Weisselberg, according to sources tonight. Plus more states banning public schools from requiring students to wear masks in direct defiance of the CDC. The Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, is out front. And the White House says President Biden is stepping up pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a Hamas official says tonight, a ceasefire is imminent.
Aaron Brunette.